Well, hello, Nativity Bible heads. It is Dr. Wayne coming at you with your Sunday morning Power Bible Study. How we doing? Today's pretty exciting. I don't know what Scott preached on today, but I'm going to talk about the Exodus passage. Now, as you may recall, last week we had the instructions for the Passover, and when did that occur? It occurred before or after the last plague was announced, but before the last plague occurred. It was 2 weeks ago that we had the passage where Moses was given the commission of his ministry, of his calling, his activity as the leader of the people, to go to the Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." And so he had done that. The plagues happened because the Pharaoh didn't let the people go. And then between last week's reading, with the giving of the instructions on the Passover, what happens? Well, the Passover happens. That's when all the firstborn of Egypt die. And that's when the Pharaoh finally calls in Aaron and Moses and says, "Go, take your people and go, Moses. Leave." I don't think that's the way Yul Brynner sounded in the Ten Commandments, but anyway, so they get up and go, right? And we are introduced to another player in the Exodus experience. Okay, if we look at our passage for today, the very first verse, it's going to refer to what I'm talking about here, but we haven't been introduced to it yet because we didn't see that in our reading. Chapter 14, verse 19. Exodus 14:19. The angel of God, who was going before the Israelite army, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved in front of them and took its place behind them. What? Okay, back in chapter 13, verse 21 and 22, the last two verses of the previous chapter, it says, "The Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so that they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people." So the way the narrative has constructed it, it's painted us this picture that this manifestation of God in the pillar of cloud, it looked like a pillar of cloud during the day, but at night it looked like a pillar of fire. We're not sure if the narrator is necessarily referring to two different pillars or one, because it seems like, okay, there are many places in the Bible where the narrator, in his attempt to blend different sources, ends up paints us a picture that has us saying, what, wait a second, how can, and yeah, this is one of those things, okay? So when we look at that at the end of chapter 13, we see, we are left thinking, okay, there's a pillar of fire by night, a pillar of cloud by day. So it's just one pillar, right? It's just one pillar. not sure. But because when it says neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people, it's like, oh, it was in front of the people, which means there was one pillar, but it looked differently depending upon whether it was night or day. Okay, now verse 19, verse 19 of the next chapter 14. The angel of God who was going before the Israelite army, it moved and went behind them. Okay, that's just a generic statement of the angel of God, okay? Why was it before them? Because it was leading them out. Because the Pharaoh had said, "Go, Moses, take your people and go." He said that. And just like that, I'm sure. There wasn't any pursuit at that point, was there? So the only need for the angel of God was to lead them. Lead us out. Well, between the introduction of the pillar back in chapter 13 and now in chapter 19 verse 19 of chapter 14, you know what happened? The Pharaoh's like, wait a second. How stupid was I? We can't let them go. And so he sends his military after him. Also, in the meantime, the people started complaining already. Most times we think that they didn't start complaining until after the Exodus, after they passed through the waters and they're in the Sinai Peninsula. And they're like, oh, did you bring us out here to die? We're going to get a little bit of that next week. No, they had already started it. When the people started complaining to Moses, and that's before verse 19, by the way. Moses is a little bit like, well, you'll see, the Lord is going to do something really big. Something big is going to happen. And then let's see how your complaints are, because there's something really big going to happen. Okay, let's talk about that. Without this event, this spoiler alert, this is the going through the water thing, 10 Commandments, yada, 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 all of that, passing through the sea as if on dry land. If this hadn't happened, if there hadn't been some sort of magnificent deliverance from danger to freedom, if there hadn't been some historical event like this in the history of Israel, there would have been no Israel. Yeah, I know, we've got all those stories about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and yada, yada, yada. If this hadn't happened, we wouldn't have had a monarchy. We wouldn't have had a faith event that happens on the Sinai Peninsula with the giving of the 10 Commandments. None of that would have happened. This is the foundational event in the life of our faith. And it's all around God delivering us from danger. Us experiencing freedom. It's an experience of us having moved from bondage to freedom. In the early the civil rights era with Martin Luther King and all of that went on in the 50s and 60s with the civil rights movement, this was a foundational text kind of a thing. You want to look at the Bible for slavery? Well, you want to look at the Bible for deliverance. How about that? Let's look at the Bible with regard to what it says about deliverance. Yeah. There you go. That's what this is. And it's for all of us. Because all of us at one point or another, whether it's physical or it's spiritual, mental, emotional, take your pick, we're in prison. We're in bondage. We have no freedom. And for a lot of us, you know what it is about? It's simply about the fact that we have imprisoned ourselves. We have put ourselves in bondage to what? Those decisions that we have made about ourselves and how our life will be. God delivers us even from that. So the oppression doesn't necessarily have to be coming from without. It can also come from within, and frequently does. That's the road to transformation. Now, okay, 10 minutes, 11 minutes in now, and I still haven't gotten past verse 1. I want to get this done in 30 minutes, though. But I wanted to get that piece in about the foundational nature of this event. And I want you to dissociate those scenes you've seen in movies. I know I've encouraged it. Watch the Ten Commandments. Yeah, do that. But don't let that picture, see what those movies are. That's just some director, writer, whatever, looking at this text and saying, how should that look? The text, let's just let the text tell us, okay? Instead of the pictures that are reverberating in our brain. How about that? All right? Verse 20. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel, the pillar. It, not they. And so the cloud was there with the darkness, and it lit up the night. One did not come near the other all night. That's where we were like, wait a second, are there two pillars? Or one did not come near the other. I think, I think it's talking about the army of Israel and the Israelites. The army of Egypt and the army of Israel. That's it. I think it's talking about, see where it says the army of Egypt and the army of Israel. Notice the militaristic language with regard to the Exodus. We didn't read this, I don't think. Yeah, we didn't read this in today's lesson, but a lot of the language is very militaristic. In their leaving, it says they went by companies. Companies, a militaristic term for bunches. Very much a military thing. I don't have time to go into the implications of all of that, but just realize there's a lot of times we get that. So there is a tradition whereby it's a military kind of an advance or retreat. I don't know how you want to see it. Verse 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. Notice, it never even has told us that they've come to the sea. We're just told that they had this pillar that was in front of them, leading them, and all of a sudden the Pharaoh says, oh, no. And so he sends his chariots and his chariot drivers, and we'll see that. That's a key little liturgical trope. Chariots and the chariot drivers. And they're chasing them. The pillar moves behind them to protect them. Notice the language is creating a picture that there's like the pillar that's the cloud is like, it makes things hard, makes things difficult for the pursuing Egyptians. And we're not told much about their movement as a body, as like, oh, these people wandering. The last thing we ever heard was that, oh, the Lord told them to go this way, don't go that way. But eventually they come to the sea. And here we are, chapter 20, or verse 21 of chapter 14. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. There had been an instruction earlier. Moses was told, hey, tell the Israelites, go forward. You're going to lift up your staff. You're going to stretch your hand over the sea, and you're going to divide it. That would happen back in verse 16 of chapter 14. So just a few verses before we started today, God had told him, you're going to come to the sea. This is what you're going to do. And you're going to lift up your hands. You're going to divide it. That they're going to go into the sea on dry ground. That was in verse 16. Look at this. Okay, the second sentence of verse 21. The Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. This verse is packed with so many things that refer back to the creation motif. What is it that evokes themes of the creation? Oh, look at it. The wind. The wind. Remember in Genesis 1, the wind of God, the Spirit of God, blew across the waters of chaos. Oh, anytime you're in front of a body of water in the Bible, guess what? It's a symbol of chaos. You even see that in the New Testament with Jesus and the calming of the sea and the walking on the water. You're going to walk on water if you're the Lord that turned the chaos into dry land. Hello. That's just the way that goes. So water and the sea is always symbolic of the chaos, of the uncreatedness. Okay. Verse 22. Creation motifs. We didn't finish. So the wind turning the sea into dry land, creation motif, and the waters were divided. Remember there was one of the days of creation where the waters were divided. Waters from waters. And God created a firmament. And that's how we had that little dome-shaped universe of the flat earth and all of that from Genesis 1. Now, verse 22. The Israelites went into the sea on dry ground. That's right. That's just the way it's going to be. Because when God is creating something new, you're not going to have to deal with muddy ground. No, because in creation, the waters were separated from the waters and dry ground appeared. So, of course, they're going to walk on dry ground here because that fits the creation motif. Remember, God is doing something new here. The waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Yeah, I know you got it. I know you're thinking of this. That Cecil B. DeMille movie, right? The wall of water. The idea where it says wall, the water's forming a wall. The wall. What is that? It's like, wow. Our God is the God that can control chaos and turn the chaos of waters into something sturdy and protective even, like a wall. Very poetic. Verse 23. The Egyptians pursued and went into the sea after them. All of the Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and chariot drivers, because God knows if you got a horse and a chariot, hello, there's got to be a chariot driver. It just adds to the drama and fills out the mental picture. At the morning watch, the Lord, in the pillar of fire and cloud, looked down upon the Egyptian army and threw the Egyptian army into panic. He clogged their chariot wheels so that they turned with difficulty. Oh, wait a second. We were just told that the Israelites were walking through as if on dry land. And now we're seeing, wait a second. They're clogged. He clogged their chariot wheels. We're not sure about that. The Masoretic text, I don't want to get into that. The most authoritative Hebrew text we have has the word removed. He removed their chariot wheels so that they turned with difficulty. The idea that they even though the ground may have been dry, but it wasn't without its hazards. But the older tradition from the Sumerian Greek and the Syriac texts have the word clogged, which paints a picture of, dry land for them, but not for them, right? That actually adds to the poetic nature of it all. And the idea of the creation motifs. It was a new creation for Israel. For the Egyptians, they're just chasing through a swampy land, trying to, get it them. The Egyptians said, we're in the middle of verse 25, the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites. For the Lord," and that's the covenant name, Yahweh, the tetragrammaton, the four consonants. "The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." So this is like the reckoning. Oh, wow. Woo, okay, God. Okay, their God wins. We can't fight against this God. This is what ancient religion was all about, folks. The most ancient religion is all about, can your God protect you from your enemies? Can your God protect you from danger? So the earliest pictures of Yahweh is that Yahweh is this divine warrior that does battle for his people. This is that kind of language. And it comes back. Oh, the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. We can't deal with this. Let's flee. Very ancient kind of a tradition. Verse 26. We're only going to verse 31. Oh, I am trying to get this through in 7 more minutes. Okay. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon the chariots, and the chariot drivers." So the way we take it is that, they're on the other side, the wind, it's like, okay, everybody's safe on the other side. Egyptians are having trouble anyway. Let the waters close in. Okay, verse 27, or 27. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at dawn, notice dawn, so that meant that the crossing happened at night, and what's the significance of night? The significance of night is that night is the beginning of the day. Yes, that's a part of the creation motif. Remember in Genesis 1 where it says, "And it was evening and it was morning the first day," or it was evening and it was morning the second day. Why evening and morning and not morning? Because the day started when the sun went down. That's the way that was been in the Bible. Still is in the accounting of. That's the reason why of the Jewish religion and even in Islam, the sundown Friday. That's when the Sabbath begins, and then it's over on the sundown on Saturday. Okay. As the Egyptians fled before it, the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. So the idea of the waters crashing in on them, made it look as though the Egyptians were being tossed into the sea. It's very possible that one of these traditions was that they were just going through some mossy ground. There was a big wind that kind of pushed the waters back. We know that this happens in the northern Nile Delta. And the Egyptian, it's like not a very good way to go if you're in a chariot. Difficulty, major. Look at this. Verse 28, the waters returned and covered the chariots and the chariot driver. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. A little bit of a, what do you call that? Hyperbole, exaggeration, right? But the Israelites, verse 29, and here's the creation motif again. The Israelites walked on dry ground through the sea. The waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. We'd already heard that, but our narrator loved it so much. Like, okay, we got to say this again. But that wall, they were already through here. Okay, verse 30, Exodus 14, verse 30. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. All that means is that that's just evidence of like, oh wow, we didn't realize we were even being pursued. And now we see the evidence that we were. What it does is it just increases the amount of like, of gratitude. It's kind of like that in our spiritual life if you think about it. You know, those things that we overcome, those demons that pursue us, those things that we've left behind that, like every once in a while we'll get a glimpse of it in our present day life, having gone over it. It's like, oh, I remember that. We don't have to be haunted by our past. We don't have to be continually tripped up by things that used to trip us up. They saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Oh, how about that? That's interesting. I used to have a problem with this or that or the other thing, but you know what? Ain't no thing no more. Ain't no thing no more. He saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. I think that's a good little lesson right there. That'll preach, right? Preach it. Verse 31, last verse. Israel saw the great work that the Lord did against the Egyptians. So the people feared the Lord and believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So all of this that happened was, okay, you know how in the Gospel of John, Jesus, or the narrator will frequently say, after Jesus does some sign, it's always a sign, we call it a miracle. Jesus does some sign. John always tells us that Jesus performed his signs. Why? In order that we might believe. Everything that Jesus did, according to John and the Gospel of John, was that all of those marvelous works, all of those signs were done so that we may believe. Look at that. This is exactly what happened. That marvelous deed that God did in the Exodus, the escape through water, the escape through chaos, is why? So that we may believe. They ended up believing. That's the reason why we have what we have in the New Testament. Our New Testament writers, they knew this Bible so well. They used those themes. That's why it's so important that we study it. So there you have it, folks. The Exodus event. Praise be to God, right? We all have our Exodus events. That experience in life of like, oh, I can't get through this difficulty by myself. There's creation, there's chaos in front of me. We just need the Lord to create a new future for us. This is what transformation is all about. That journey of experiencing being unburdened when burden is all that's there. Of being under the slave, the taskmaster, of a slave to something. And then it's like, yeah, you know what? That's not forever. If we're open to it, God will open us a future that we have to step through. Moses could have done everything that he did. If the people didn't go through, well, you know what they say. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Well, yeah. You can lead the people of Israel to the waters, but you can't make them cross. But we got to cross it, and we got to trust the Lord. And on the other side, they did. Okay, there you have it. That's your Sunday morning Power Bible study. Live with this. Live with this hope of what God can do when chaos, nothing but chaos is in front of us. And trusting God and letting God be God. Peace.